There's a word that native English speakers say over 50 times every single day, and I guarantee you don't know what it is. It's not hello, it's not thank you, and it's definitely not in any textbook you've ever studied. This word is so common that Americans, Brits, and Australians use it unconsciously in almost every conversation, yet most English learners have never heard of it. If you've been studying English for years and still feel like something's missing when you talk to natives, this might be the missing piece. By the end of this video, you'll not only know this secret word, but you'll understand exactly when and how to use it to sound completely natural. I'm a linguistics researcher who's been analyzing native speaker conversations for over a decade, and I've helped thousands of students bridge that gap between textbook English and real fluency. What I discovered in my research completely changed how I teach English, because it revealed something that traditional education completely ignores. Native speakers have an entire layer of communication that exists below the surface of formal grammar and vocabulary. It's made up of small words, sounds, and patterns that carry enormous social meaning, but they're invisible to non-native speakers. These micro-elements are what make the difference between sounding like you learned English from a book and sounding like you grew up speaking it. Now, if you've ever had that frustrating experience where you know your grammar is correct, your vocabulary is advanced, but something still feels off when you're talking to native speakers, you're experiencing exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe they seem slightly confused, or they pause just a moment too long before responding, or conversations feel more formal than they should. This isn't because your English is bad. It's because you're missing these invisible social signals that natives use automatically. The word I'm about to reveal to you is one of the most powerful of these signals, and once you start noticing it, you'll hear it everywhere. But here's what's really fascinating about this word, and this is going to surprise you. It doesn't actually mean anything, at least not in the traditional sense. It has no dictionary definition that explains its real function in conversation. Linguists call it a discourse marker, but that academic term doesn't capture what it actually does. This word is pure social glue. It creates connection, shows understanding, manages conversation flow, and signals that you're engaged and following along. When natives use it, they're not conveying information. They're conveying relationship. They're saying, I'm with you, I understand, I'm tracking what you're saying, and I want this conversation to continue smoothly. The word is right, but not right as in correct or the opposite of left. I'm talking about right as a conversation tool that natives sprinkle throughout their speech without even thinking about it. So, we're meeting at 7, right? You finished the report, right? This is the place, right? It's checking for understanding, creating agreement, and keeping everyone on the same page. But it goes much deeper than just asking for confirmation. When natives say, right, in the middle of explaining something, they're giving you a moment to catch up, showing they care about whether you're following, and creating a sense of collaboration rather than just lecturing at you. Now, before we go deeper into how to use this, I want you to understand why this matters so much for your fluency. When you don't use these discourse markers, native speakers unconsciously feel like something's missing from the conversation. It's not that they think your English is bad. They might not even be able to identify what feels different. But conversations feel more transactional, less connected, slightly more formal than they need to be. On the other hand, when you do use right naturally, you're signaling that you understand not just the language, but the culture of conversation itself. You're showing that you know how to create the back-and-forth rhythm that makes English conversations feel natural and engaging. Let me show you exactly how natives use right in different situations, because the placement and intonation completely change its function. When it comes at the end of a statement with rising intonation, we're leaving at 6, right? It's seeking confirmation and agreement. When it appears in the middle of an explanation with neutral intonation, so first, you heat the oil, right, then you add the onions. It's creating a pause for understanding and maintaining connection. And when it starts a response with falling intonation, right. So what happened next was It's acknowledging what was just said and signaling that you're building on it. Each position has a different social function, and natives switch between them automatically. Here's a perfect example from a conversation I recorded last week. A native speaker was giving directions and said, "So you go down Main Street right, until you see the big blue building, right? Then you turn left at the light." Notice how right isn't asking for confirmation. She knows the person doesn't know these directions yet. Instead, she's using right to chunk the information into manageable pieces and make sure her listener can follow along. It transforms what could be an overwhelming stream of directions into a collaborative process where both people are working together to ensure understanding. This is the kind of natural rhythm that makes native speakers sound so effortlessly fluent. Now pay close attention to this next point, because this is where most English learners get it completely wrong. They either overuse right and sound repetitive, or they use it with the wrong intonation and create confusion instead of connection. The key is frequency and naturalness. Native speakers use right about once every minute in casual conversation, but it needs to feel spontaneous, not forced. If you're consciously inserting it every few sentences, you're doing it wrong. The magic happens when you start feeling the natural pause points where right would help your listeners stay with you. It's about developing an intuitive sense for when the conversation needs that little bridge of understanding. Just yesterday, one of my students messaged me with an amazing breakthrough. She said she'd been practicing using right naturally in conversations. And suddenly, her American colleague told her, "Your English sounds so much more natural lately. I can't put my finger on what's different, but something has really improved." This is exactly what happens when you master these invisible elements of English. People can't identify what's changed, but they feel the difference immediately. Your English doesn't just become more accurate, it becomes more human, more connected, more like the English that natives actually speak instead of the formal version taught in classrooms. Remember, you don't need to use right perfectly from day one. Even native speakers vary in how they use discourse markers, and there's no